last chance today. The Saudi window comes to a close tonight. So, to a degree, our attention is on the Saudi Pro League and who might end up there today. We're going to get into this more of it. I mean, we're pretty much darn sure now that Mo Salah will not end up in the Saudi Pro League
in this window
by the close of play. Exactly, not in this window. Having said that, who knows? Because we hear the man at the very top of Al Ittihad still wants him. That's not to say they won't bid. They might. Will they get him? Probably not. Everton have confirmed the last few moments that Demarai Gray has left the club and he joins the Saudi Pro League today. He heads out to join Steven Gerrard at Al Ettifaq. He will be a teammate of Jordan Henderson, of course. And when Brendan Rodgers, Celtic manager, was on the other day, he said, yeah, we've got to face it. The Saudis have a plan all right.
It's definitely something that makes players wobble, for sure, because of the money that is talked about and what it can do for not just players and their families, but the legacy that they can create for their families for years down the line. So it's definitely something. I think the thing that makes it dangerous is, and I only know because I actually spoke to a club in Saudi when I left Leicester and was thinking of maybe taking a year out of respect. I spoke to a team a couple of times. I think the big thing that they have is what makes them dangerous is, of course, they have the money, but they have a plan there. Plan is on course in terms of attracting top players and looking to get top managers.
Well, of course they have a plan, and we knew that weeks ago.
Out of respect.
Yeah, we knew that weeks ago because their chief executive, Michael Emenalo, told us we have a plan, and the plan is to become one of the biggest leagues in world football.
Great.
So they've done that, Simon. They've got eyeballs on their league.
Indeed.
So they're slowly trying to take over by stealth.
Take over what?
Bit by bit by bit.
Take over what?
They hope their wealth will end up with them dominating football.
Okay. Look, we will see how that plays out. My main argument would be, if you believe that the rest of the football leagues around the world are just going to sit there and say that the Saudis get a free range to run their football how they want, to disrupt the ecosystem, to have no governance whatsoever, to have no parameters that are equal to anyone else. I don't understand why there's an argument they're going to be in the Champions League. That's a European competition. They're not on that continent.
Yeah, but the European situation is interesting because European football might have to give the Saudis something back in return. Let me explain why.
Why?
Well, is Europe going to try and bring Saudi into line with their rules? It might just, because European clubs want FIFA to establish regulations that guarantee that they will get their money from Saudi transfer fees. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, did Wolves get all the money they wanted for Ruben Neves? Maybe not. And let me explain that. In Europe, under UEFA's jurisdiction, there is a no overdue payments rule.
Yeah, it's called football credit policy.
Yeah, and that means that clubs must meet their obligations to fellow football club creditors and tax authorities by agreed deadlines.
Yes, absolutely.
Does that apply to the Saudis? No, it doesn't, because they're not under the European jurisdiction.
By that. So what you would then turn around and say to the Saudis is, if you want to buy our players, you have to pay all of the transfer fee up front.
Otherwise, they've done that. Every deal they've done.
We can't on one hand say they've got more money than God, and then on the second hand say they want to pay it on the drip. So I assume it's not much of a problem.
But why are European clubs now meeting and talking about this?
Because did
you get your money in a one? Did they pay you in a one?
I would imagine, without being in the meeting, that the conversation is about how do we ensure that at some point in the development of this league, which is quite beneficial to us right now because they're paying stupid money to us for players that we don't want, right? So right now it suits us, but in a longer game, how do we make sure that they have the same landscape that we have? Because if they have the same landscape as we have, in which parallel universe are players going to want to go and play in Saudi? Once you take away their only advantage, their only game changer, the only part of the Saudi factor that has any resonance,
the ultimate game changer,
right? But once you take that away,
you tell us constantly footballers love money.
But once you take away that away, and you say to people, you've got to have financial fair play governing you to compete in major tournaments, to compete in the Champions League if we're going to evolve that, to compete in the FIFA World Club Championships, you have to have the same governance that everyone else has.
And the Saudis will say to that, okay, we'll meet your demands to do that.
Right, and then
so what are we going to get in return? How about a place in the Champions League for one of our clubs?
And that's fine. You could have that. And then I would ask you the question is, why would you play in Saudi if you can get the same money playing for Liverpool, you can get the same money playing for Manchester United, the same money playing for Real Madrid, the same money playing for Barcelona, the only competitive, if you want to call it that, competitive advantage that the Saudis have, for me, in the immediate future, is finances. And in order for those finances to have any merit, they need to be able to keep throwing it at it.
Yes, but that is then, Simon. For now, the Saudis are offering ridiculous money and are getting some serious players over there.
Not really.
They are.
They're getting players at the end of their careers. They're getting people that are like
Ruben Neves.
Well, there are individuals like Ruben Neves that
More than decent.
are the exception that don't prove the rule. They are getting
Sané.
The majority of their players. Sané is on his way down. He's gone from Liverpool to Bayern Munich, stunk the place out of Bayern Munich, and he's ending up in Saudi because he's on the decline. The bottom line is that the bulk of the players, not all of them, you're right, not all of them, are players that are coming to the end of their careers and see this as a huge commercial opportunity. No one's going to Saudi right now for any other reason, despite all the best intentions of the nonsense that we're listening to, for any other reason than money, right? Now,
I agree.
The moment that changes, and if they don't want to participate in the Champions League, then they can carry this on ad infinitum because we know they've got the money to do it. But if their end game is to have a competitive league that dominates world football, that's what their end game is, they need to play amongst the other sides. If the other sides, if they're going to do that, they're going to have to come in on the same criteria. And the criteria is some form of governance, which I would imagine suits the Saudis anyway. They want some governance at some point. So when you're at that point, why would the top players choose to go and play in Saudi if they can get the same money in Saudi?
But it's Champions League football. The Saudis would have Champions League football by then.
So there'd be another league. That's all it is, another competitive league. Fantastic. The more competition in football, the more opportunities for football to keep evolving. Great. But what we're talking about at this moment in time is disruption. What we've got right now is not admirable. It's not something to applaud. It's not something to revere. It's not something to admire. It's basically a particular sentiment being deployed through sport, which is we want to utilise sport as the gatekeeper for a whole raft of other opportunities, whether that's soft influence, whether it's industrial benefit, whether it's projecting to the fact we've got a green future coming down the line and people don't need fossil fuel, so we need other ways to be able to influence the world. So all of this comes into play. But the point is this, is that we sit here and it's not to be admired, but it's the reality of football. And they're taking it to a new level. Their level is taking it to a new space that even Abramovich and Sheikh Mansour in their worst incarnation didn't take it to, because of the reasons being that there was an element of governance in English football. And the moment governance comes into Saudi football, there goes their competitive advantage.
But all of a sudden,
why would you go there?
That's why European clubs want to invite the Saudis to the table now.
They're not inviting them to the table.
Yes, they are.
No, they're not. They're telling them...
They're concerned about them.
No, they're telling them, they're laying the pipework down for if you intend to continue operating and you want to come to the top table with us, your money doesn't get you there right now, but if you do want to come there, there's going to be certain parameters you have to adhere to. Yeah. One of them is the football creditors policy. The other will be financial fair play at sometimes. Guaranteed.
And they'll say, fine, what are you going to give us in return? Spot in the Champions League.
Access to the Champions League.
Yeah.
And that's no problem with that. Why would we have a problem with that?
But all of a sudden they'll be in.
They're fantastic.
Then they're in.
And they're governed by...
You said that would never happen.
No, and they'll be governed by the same financial protocols. So that means the competitive advantage they have...
Yes, but you also said they'll never get a place in the Champions League.
No, I didn't.
This is how they're going to do it.
No, I didn't. I said that there's no reason for them to be given a place in the Champions League unless they comply with financial fair play, and there goes their competitive advantage, and Jude Bellingham doesn't go rocking over to play for Al Hilal rather than Real Madrid.
Well, Ruben Neves has gone, Sadio Mane's gone, now Demarai Gray has gone. He's joined Al Ettifaq. He'll play with Jordan Henderson under Steven Gerrard. The landscape is changing.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.